Urgent underrated crypto is about to explode. This is NC Hammer Crypto. My name's Neil. We keep technical analysis short and sweet. Jumping into Bitcoin, it is doing exactly what we've been talking about. Most likely getting a consolidation just to build for that pop. So keeping Bitcoin in mind, we are trying to just slightly push over downward trend line and push up and out of that area. Moving straight over to tornado. I've been talking about tornado. I do not get promoted by tornado in any way. I just want you guys to make money, but this is not financial advice in any way. However, we did have our entry here at 750. We saw that once I said we break over this $10 to $11 mark, that we were going to have a push up. We pushed up once, came back in right here on this day, and then pushed up and then tested right in that area. And as we see, it pushed up once more. So if you had entered in around 750, or I guess once it did this retest, 27% up from that price point. However, our entry, if you were in my signal channel, we entered down here, we are up about 80%. And we pushed in with a little bit more once it broke out and held above this trend line. Not the best entry, but we saw that it tested this area, tested a little lower, and then took off still. So we are still in profit in that, and it does have an absolute ridiculous way to go. Just to be hitting the cup and handle, it's $32, but all-time high of $459. So not financial advice, but if you haven't entered into tornado, it's not a bad bet. Moving on to QNT. QNT is still looking very healthy. I can clearly see that there is this inverse head and shoulders, which is always a nice sign to see. Here's the left shoulder and the right shoulder building a little bit of support before taking off is what we can expect for QNT. As when we zoom out, we see the bigger picture. The 618 is around $280 from 122. However, I believe the all-time high is going to be over 1,000 to 1,500. And this is on the daily, and we're getting over that 200 EMA. We see that back here, we are forming, imagine the 200 EMA coming in right here. And so with that, once it pushes up over the 200 EMA, tests as support, we see a major push upwards. We can expect something similar with QNT, as now it pushed up over, did not hold it as support, pushed up, touched here, used it as support with that downward trend line that we broke and this bigger downward trend line, and now is using the 200 EMA as support, getting a little rejection up here. But that's nothing to worry about as we are holding above the CM guppy, and I expect QNT to start pushing upwards with Bitcoin and the rest of the market. BNT is actually very important. This is DNT. I'm going to go into some pretty heavy detail on BNT in this video, but DNT broke the downward trend line. As we can see, this black downward trend line held this upward trend line and the downward trend line as support. Tried to hold over the 200 EMA, that did not work. It flagged off, and we can see it's still trying to build some support on an upward trend line here. For the daily, that doesn't look the best for DNT. You can always readjust your lines, and we just want to see higher volume, as we see that when we had this major volume here, we had the major push up to 4 cents from around 2, almost 3 cents. Pretty significant gains within one day. However, we just want to see a little bit more pushing up and holding above this 200 EMA. If you haven't entered into DNT, definitely don't make a huge bag of it, but it's something to keep in mind as it does have some nice potential. Bringing back D-Force. D-Force is actually not that bad. We see that its absolute low is around 0.019. If we build an upward trend line from here, See that it is trying to hold some support off of this line. So it may potentially touch that, but we're getting real tight in between 0.024 and 0.047. So if you were to take the potential gains downwards, it's around minus 17%, but the upward potential is 58%. So definitely a better risk for reward ratio. It is at a very, very low point. As you can see that it did have highs all the way up here around $1.13. So thanks for bringing D-Force to my attention. I'm going to keep an eye on it, not exactly enter at this exact moment, but it's definitely something to take a look at. Moving on over to Doge. Doge is testing that area where you had the opportunity to enter at 21 cents and sell off at 28. And we are right back at that opportunity, testing off that 200 EMA, holding above the CM guppy, volumes picking up. So I'm pretty bullish on Dogecoin right around this area, as we are trying to hold this upward trend line as well, and mainly hold this 21 cents as support before ultimately pushing back up to 28, breaking that, and then coming up here to 35, 41, and 48, and then beyond 48, there is a lot of room to run. So Dogecoin at this exact moment is really not that bad of an entry. Again, not financial advice. Render is doing some nice consolidation, getting a little bit more bullish, trying to hold an upward trend line as well, right here. And we are getting real tight with the pressure on the 200 EMA and the upward trend line. We mainly want to see it push up over this 440, and then we can expect a push to 5.4, and then beyond that up to $8 for Render. GRT and then BNT, one of the most important for this video, even though a lot of people may not know about it. GRT is trying to hold support, broke over a downward trend line, testing it as support, getting the 200 EMA a little bit closer, and you can always readjust your lines so they match a little bit better, or seeing it from a different angle. But we mainly want to see some support off this, volume picking up, and it's not in my chart at the moment, but I'll put in RSI so we can get a better view of what it is. So we see that the RSI is right here at the 50. The yellow is coming down. When we cross over the yellow, we see, for example, right here on April 9th, in the RSI, crossing over the yellow and holding as support, similar to right here, crossing over, holding as support, and then that push up towards the 10-cent mark. So we are actually getting real tight with the 10-cent mark. You could also take this inverse head and shoulders and clone that and put that right here. More or less, you can kind of see the inverse head and shoulders forming out and pushing back up towards the 20-cent mark. Now BNT, the most important for the video, this one is looking very ripe. It's doing very similar patterns that we've seen before. We mainly just need to see it hold in the CM guppy, start pushing upwards. This is essentially a bull flag. I'd compare this, I'll throw it in here for XLM, doing a similar pattern, just a little elongated, major push up, flag form, and then we can expect another push up. Looking at the bull flags just in Google, you see that it does the similar pattern. An example more on this one right here, where it starts trickling out, getting consolidation before ultimately breaking that downward trend line and pushing up once more. So moving back into BNT, similar pattern, pushing within the trend line like this, and the bottom, like that, downward wedge forming within here. When we break this area, when we break back up above 0.80, I want to now zoom out into the bigger picture. So way out here, inverse head and shoulders, if it gets that push up, we could be expecting a push to $1.49. but I actually want to zoom out even further into the weekly. I don't know what this is. This is just for your amusement. We can see that exactly within this area is something similar to what is happening over here that's a little bit hard to see. So inverse head and shoulders, major push up from right around $1 to $3.68, bringing everything back in. I was looking at this a little bit earlier and it just looks better and better by the moment. Inverse head and shoulders as we have written right here, holding right at the around 78-cent mark. This dotted red line is very important, as we can see that when this pushed underneath this dotted red line, pushed right back up to $1.10, and then from that $1.10 is the $3 where are we at? $3.60. You can't imagine, I guess, here, let me draw it for you. 200 EMA right there. Something similar to that. So if you can take that image in your head and you see we pushed underneath the 200 EMA, touched it, pushed down, touched it once more, pushed up. Once we got over that 200 EMA, we shot off to $3.78 in 1 week. Immediately after, completely back to the original point. Indecision, trying to decide if it's going to be more bearish or bullish with these two wick offs on this specific candle for the 21st of December of the 20th. Jesus Christ. And we see that it held support on this green line at $1.25. When that happened, I believe I was looking at it earlier, it was 14 weeks from getting over that 200 EMA. 14 weeks to push up to this area. Here, let's just measure it out. 200 EMA. Just to this area, which is around $6.90, a 413% increase, more or less. Definitely more. That was about 63 days. So in about 2 months, it pushed up about 419% before getting rejected back down to the $4.80, holding it immediately as support, which is 200% more or less decrease, before ultimately shooting up to around 562% increase. So when you're scalping that, this is an entire week on this orange bar. So people sold off for an entire week. And then the next week after that, major push up with another 300% increase. This is BNT. But when we zoom out, the all-time high is $20. Now, taking that into consideration, this is a little confusing with that Fibonacci. Looking at the bigger picture, we see 200 EMA right here. Right now we are about to cross over that 200 EMA with a similar pattern of the inverse head and shoulders, and then push up potentially to 370. Rejection, touch the 200 EMA again for support, and then push off to the roughly $9 mark. From 76 cents to $9. That's kind of my overview for BNT. All the others QNT. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys invested in good suggestions from other people, because this is not financial advice, but good luck. Have fun with it. I will see you guys on the next one.